very much. In my 5 minutes, I hope to convey that we're at a really interesting point. That might not be showing correctly, that's okay. We're at a really interesting point in history. A lot of hurdles have been overcome in access to knowledge and information in the health realm, and tonight we're actually seeing some really fantastic examples. It's really exciting to think about potentially life-saving uses of data that are opening to us today through initiatives like Data.gov. Obviously, we have major computing power. This MacBook Air, compared to the first IBM, would have cost about $4 million to get the same amount of computing power. And we carry these things around in our pocketbooks. We also have a lot of knowledge and information at our fingertips and apps. There are hundreds of apps now. We just saw a great one. So knowledge is there. And in some sense, the health information access revolution is over. I'm talking about the knowledge. Now we can turn to data. In terms of knowledge, we can find out, how do I quit smoking? Who else is out there that has a complicated issue like I do? How can I find professionals who work in the health fields that I work in? So what's new? I want to tell a little story about data. History and science buffs probably know that there are three paradigms of science. Does anybody know the three? Okay, good. You might learn a little something today. So now there's actually a fourth. Let me explain. This guy is Jim Gray. Jim was a very brainy data guy who lived at Berkeley, went to Berkeley, wrote lots of theory, invented several things. He was a technical fellow at Microsoft. There's actually a really interesting article in the November Harvard Business Journal that called The Big Idea, the Next Scientific Revolution, and it explains what I'm about to show you. So there were three paradigms in science. Paradigm one was based on theory. That's when people evolved from explaining our surroundings as supernatural or mythological caused by Zeus to actually realizing there are some natural laws. That was long ago. Paradigm two is where we got to experiment. People started venturing a theory and then experimenting. Paradigm three came along in the last century when we could start using machines to turn out numbers and data and use actual statistics as proof. So now, here we are in paradigm four. We're kind of just on the cusp of it, according to Jim Gray. Paradigm four is data mining. So now we get to start with data, all this rich data that's being pushed out at us. And we can tell our software, our apps, our computers to mine these enormous data stores and look for relationships and answers to help us solve complex problems. So it's something that's never been able to be done before on this scale. What does the data mining imperative look like? I have a couple of real-life examples. One of them is from the Harvard Business Review. There was a fellow named Eric Horvitz who was working at a VA hospital, and he realized that patients with congestive heart failure were coming in huge numbers during the holidays, and he realized something must be going on. So he developed some software that scanned 300,000 patient records. And it's key. Now, the fact is these patient records are available. We're collecting data. We have access. That's the exciting point. He discovered common threads, and what did he discover when he mined his data? That salt was the common factor. So knowledge is power. Salt from all the salty food we eat at the holidays. This kind of discovery just would never have been possible before without access to what we're collecting. So again, if there's any reason to kind of promote this work that's being done to collect patient data, to standardize it, to open it, it's potentially life-saving. So what does all this have to do with open data? We have opportunities to be creative and provide data like never before. We know, sadly, that a lot of our data is still locked in PDFs, and I spend a lot of my time with clients trying to break away from this. You all are aware of Data.gov. probably have visited that website. I thought I'd close by showing 2 examples of ways that we have used open data from Data.gov to help us analyze and understand. The first one is a website called datamasher.org, and it was created last year in a contest run by the Sunlight Foundation. And datamasher.org pulls the data from data.org and lets any user create a mashup of 2 variables. So this one I've chosen is adult overweight obesity plus cancer incidence. And it lets you visualize it, see where it's highest in the US. It lets you dig deeper, it lets you comment, start a conversation. Pretty informative. The second one is county sin rankings. And this is kind of a fun take on actually a different, very serious website we created. The first one was called County Health Rankings. That lets you type in your zip code and see how healthy your county is based on a number of different indicators. County Sin Rankings lets you see based on indicators as they map to the 7 deadly sins that I made us with. I just got one more thing. Another one is the obesity epidemic website. It's really awesome, created by the Mix. Imagine obesity information in a plain old table, terribly boring to understand, but visualize it, make it interesting, and grab users. This is actually an interactive website that lets you go back about 30 years and watch how each state compares and has grown over time. So, with that, I just encourage us all to think about what data we can unlock, what can we do with it, as Jim Gray taught us to do. Thanks.